Hello, my name is Hannah. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in July 2014. Initially advised that I was stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma and that I would need 4 cycles of ABVD treatment, and upon completion of that the diagnosis should put me into remission. But following the cycles of ABVD and the PET scan that followed fairly quickly afterwards, the scan highlighted disease within my chest area. So initially told that I needed 6 months treatment, and then to find that it had not worked was fairly emotional. It was quite a roller coaster. Every medical appointment I went to, you found out new bits of information, lots of different questions, lots of uncertainty. But the one thing that we weren't sure about was whether actually I needed radiotherapy to get rid of whatever was left, or whether actually it was new growth and actually radiotherapy wouldn't work. After about an 8-week period of waiting to see actually what happened, it was fairly apparent due to new lumps appearing within my neck area, where my original sort of highlighted area was, that actually we'd got new disease, and that this opened up a whole new can of worms in terms of different treatment plans and different options. So at that point, stem cell transplants were kind of thrown into the mix, and auto and allo transplants were kind of discussed, and lots of statistics, and as a result also an awful lot of confusion. But through time we came to realise that actually I needed 2 treatments of chemotherapy called ESHAP, which involved 5-day admissions into the hospital and with a couple of weeks at home in between, and then another 5 days. And that was fairly critical for me in terms of, if that was successful, then I would go down the route of a stem cell transplant using my own cells, or if that was unsuccessful, then we'd need to look at the options in terms of donor stem cell transplant. We identified following my ESHAP chemotherapy that actually that had been successful and I had got to remission. So as a result, we did proceed to stem cell transplant using my own stem cells. In preparation for going into hospital, I made sure that I'd got lots of clean pyjamas, lots of soft clothes, made sure that I was comfortable, because reading up, it kind of implied that you would swell up. So you wanted to make sure that you were comfortable throughout the whole process. I took lots of digital devices, so Kindles, iPads, books, and things to do really, puzzles, notebooks. And one thing that was quite nice actually, whenever my parents visited, they brought me a different picture of a memory that had happened probably on the previous few years of our life, and actually that was quite nice. It gave us something to talk about and something to focus on. The first week is all about getting ready really for your stem cell transplant, so it's actually more chemotherapy. I was in the fortunate position that the hospital I was staying in actually allowed me to walk around the hospital for the first few days of actually being an inpatient. But I made the decision to do that later on. I knew the hospital was quieter, so reduced my risk of getting an infection. And I actually enjoyed sitting in the hospital garden early evening. Not an awful lot of people around, but just a bit of fresh air. In reality, once you actually then move from the chemotherapy at the initial part, so mine was beam, but I'm sure there's probably different types. Once you move on from that and actually proceed to stem cell transplant, to be honest, activities and actually staying within the room really didn't bother me. I was very fortunate. The room I had was fairly new, had its own bathroom, had a good sized TV, so TV was on an awful lot. My beam chemotherapy had quite adverse side effects for me. Throughout my whole cancer journey, nausea wasn't really a big one for me, but I was fairly nauseous throughout the initial stages of the preparation treatment for the stem cell transplant. The actual stem cell transplant did also cause me quite severe upset stomach. I found that actually maybe taking moist wipes in with you might help, or they certainly assisted me, so that might be a preparation tool that might be quite useful. I think I also made sure that I'd got things to suck on that were cold. So from a mouth perspective, that went very dry. I ended up with something called mucositis, so I didn't have any saliva. That made swallowing and actually drinking very, very difficult. It's the only diet that I've ever known that you don't drink anything on, don't really eat an awful lot for, and actually still gain weight in my instance. But I do know other people actually don't drink an awful lot, don't eat an awful lot, and actually do lose some weight. But that was one bonus I was looking for that didn't really happen. In terms of other side effects, I found that ice lollies were quite good. I think some hospital walls probably provide those. My family brought some in so that I could actually got an ice lolly or ice cubes, so that you could suck on those that kind of refreshed the mouth. I found cold foods particularly good, so like melon or pineapple, because they were juicy and refreshing, really did help in terms of trying to make you sort of like want to eat something. I'm now 12 months post-transplant and actually I'm back at work full-time. In reality, I really pushed to go back to work within 6 months post-transplant. I think in hindsight, I probably should have waited a little bit longer. I'm working full-time, but to put that into context, I started in January and we're now November. I started on 4 hours a week, so it was a very, very slow build. I'm very fortunate that my employer has supported me through that transition, but I had 18 months off work prior to going back. But life's good. I've got the hair back. Admittedly, it's a bit darker and a little bit curlier than it was before because it was blonde and straight. I haven't quite lost the weight that I was hoping to have lost, that I've kind of gained throughout this journey. But in reality, I feel well. I've got good skin. I'm actually starting to look like me again, and I'm doing things that I'm enjoying, but I'm also making the most of opportunities that present themselves. And anybody that's got concerns about what's going to happen or what's happening to them currently, stay positive, stay focused. And you can do this. I appreciate it's not easy, but with a bit of help. And, engage with people that have gone through a similar journey. Watching this video is one way. The Lymphoma Association do also have support groups, which initially I was possibly a little bit reserved about attending, but actually I found them hugely beneficial in terms of engaging with other people that are going along this journey. And actually, in reality, they can provide you with much reassurance, but also maybe answer some of the questions that you're not quite so sure about. In terms of researching what's going to happen, I guess we're all different. I quite like to know the facts and figures and have lots of questions in preparation when I go to medical appointments with my consultants. But I've always found the Lymphoma Association booklets really useful, along with those from Macmillan or sort of the NHS. I've tended to avoid Google. I think it can kind of add different elements, but again, we're all different and you've got to do what's right for you. But the information and the literature that's enclosed within the booklets, particularly about an autologous or stem cell transplant, is critical in understanding actually what's going to happen to you and actually what that treatment's going to look like and possibly what that's going to feel like. It also details some of the side effects in terms of what could happen to you. They may not happen, but everybody, again, responds in a slightly different way. But I think it's a good preparation guide and also enables you, before you actually go in for your stem cell transplant, to maybe identify what questions or what concerns you've got before going in, so that you can discuss that with your team at your hospital.